See ya. Okay, we're going live here in a couple minutes. We're going to talk about negotiation for beginners. We'll just give a few more people some time to get on here. It's 9 o'clock now, so we'll hopefully all you guys can hear me. If you guys can hear me and see me okay, I got a green background here, but we're going to be going to a different screen in the back so you guys can look at, so you just don't see just a green screen. We've been trying to get some pretty cool background for you. My IT guy, Tom, has been working like crazy to give you a cool background. And we'll probably have it for you next time. So we got started late. So we're going to switch back and forth between my face and a different screen. So bear with us. Let us know if you can hear me. If you can hear me all right and if you can see me. If you guys just want to type in the chat box, let me know you can hear and see me okay, then we can get started here in a few minutes. I know negotiation, when I first started, I was nervous, didn't have any experience in it. And I'm sure some of you were like that or either may still be like that. And if you don't have experience, the only way to get experience is to do it, to watch other people, to learn from other people, and to learn from others and do some research on your own and try things out. What you can, try things out, what you can, you might be able to learn from others, like I said, but you can try different things. You have to be good, try to be good with speaking, even if you're not really good, like I wasn't. I'm still not that great. It's always a struggle for me to negotiate, but I seem to get better. I think I'm getting better more and more when I do it. But can you guys hear me and see me okay? Just let me know in the chat box. Now we can get rolling. All right, Andy, thanks, man. Well, let's get right at it. It's a little bit after 9, so we're going to be talking about negotiation for beginners. And there's 5 easy steps that I like to use. And I mean, there's other steps to use, but these are some of the ones that I use every day, and hopefully you guys will use them. Number 1 is to listen. All you guys know that when you negotiate or when you go, I want to talk about buying, not selling, but buying. The negotiation tactic and steps when you're buying a property, because you can use different steps when you're selling, but I want to talk about buying tonight. So basically negotiation is 2 parties coming to agreement. You want to make it a win-win situation, but if you're buying something, you want to try to come out on top. I mean, I'm not saying that you have to put the sellers down or hurt them in any way or make them feel uncomfortable or be slimy about it. It's you have to go into the negotiation and not be vulnerable. You have to have confidence. So you're going to have to learn these practices and do them with repetition and practice it over and over again. So the first thing is you do not want to be vulnerable. And how to not be vulnerable is to go in it with confidence. And you say, well, how am I going to go in it with confidence if I've never done it before? Well, you're learning that tonight. The first step is don't feel like you're vulnerable. Don't go in there feeling like you're not going to get a good deal. Go in there feeling like you're going to give them what they need, but you're also going to get what you need, because you can't sell to your buyer if you don't buy way below the fair market value of the price. So keep that in mind. You're looking for the best possible deal for you, and you want to be prepared for the negotiation. You want to be prepared to buy at your buy price. So when you're beginning, when you talk to a seller, you just want to listen to them. You want to talk about the property that they have for sale. You want to build rapport. You want to listen to them, listen to their problems, emphasize with them, and try not to be vulnerable. And what I mean by vulnerable, like I'm saying, like I said before, is don't feel like that you don't know what you're doing. Try not to feel like, this is your first time negotiating. And I mean, even your first time, you're going to be nervous. You're going to be fidgety, probably don't know what to say. You're going to stumble over words, just like I do. I still do that. The only time you don't struggle and you're not vulnerable is when you know your subject inside and out. And the only way to know it inside and out is to use it and get better at it. So to build confidence and not be vulnerable, you listen to other people negotiate, and you model them, just like you model, your mentor or other people that you watch make deals happen. And when I first started making deals, I can tell you that I was really nervous. I fumbled through my words. I thought I knew my subject, and I didn't know it that well. But as I kept going, I kept learning what to say, what not to say. And basically, if you can sit down and empathize with your seller and listen to, the reasons why they're selling, what they got to have for their property. If you learn why they're selling, then, you may be able to fulfill their needs and give them what they want. If you can, you got to go in to the negotiation by listening what they want for the property, where they're going to go. After they sell the property, they may have a hard time. That's why they're selling. You have to listen to all this. So if you start talking about yourself more and more, it's not going to happen for you. So let me see how many people are on here. Let's just go back real quick and see if everybody can hear me still. Okay, Jerry said you can hear me and see me. I just want to make sure that everything's good. I got to keep switching back and forth so I can check it out and make sure everything's going good. So, okay, the first thing we're talking, like I said, negotiation for buying. You don't want to be vulnerable. You have to build your confidence. You have to learn what to say. You have to practice it with repetition. And number two is you have to listen. So that goes for buying or selling. You have to listen to your seller. So I want to tell you about one of my negotiations of many that how I did it, what I said, and how I came to buy a property on my latest property that I bought. I used Facebook groups as advertising to get my sellers and my buyers, but to negotiate and come to an agreement, what I did was I got a hold of a seller and asked them what they wanted for the property, and they began by telling me what the prices they wanted. And what I did was I went into the situation not being vulnerable. I went in letting them know that I was a professional real estate investor, that I had cash to use. And you may say you don't have cash, but you may have proof of funds, or you tell them that you have other investors that you work with. So that's going to build your confidence the minute you tell them that you have cash to buy the properties. So you're learning how to present yourself as a seasoned investor by telling them this, and by practicing telling us every time, you're going to not be vulnerable. So as you tell them that you have the cash to pay for their property, and you start to listen to them telling you why they're selling and how much they want for it, and you begin to ask, you got to ask them questions. You ask them what they want for it, and you ask them why they're selling. And that's why we have these scripts to use to ask these questions. We have the scripts right here in Insider Elite, and you go through them scripts to ask these questions to build rapport. And while you're doing this, you're building confidence in yourself, because you're looking like a professional investor, and you're asking them the right questions. So once they tell you why they're selling, you got to keep listening, because usually it's a hardship. You know that it's the 4 Ds that we find these motivated sellers, and death, divorce, disability, disaster. And that's normally one of these that's the reason. So if you keep listening to them, you use that as a negotiation tool, because you're going to know everything about them, why they're selling, how much they want, where they're moving, all these things. So you're going to use this to control the negotiation later on in the negotiation process. But after listening to everything that they tell you, you're going to want to, you have to go in there with a plan. And that plan is to know your bottom dollar. Now, you're going to know your bottom dollar when you have a buyer. You know what your buyer is willing to pay. You're going to have to do this beforehand. You're going to know what your buyer needs to pay. You're going to know what you need to make in the middle. So this is all part of your negotiation, and not being vulnerable and knowing exactly what you're going to buy this property for. So if you go into the negotiation process knowing your bottom dollar, which is step number 3, you're going to know what you can negotiate for. So like I said, I want to tell you how I negotiated the last property that I just bought. I locked up a property in Brushton, New York, right here in upstate. And I talked to the seller and found out what their bottom dollar was. I asked them what their bottom dollar was. They started off at $40,000 for the property. And then as I negotiated with them and talked to them and listened to them and overcame my vulnerability, overcame some confidence that I may have not had at the beginning, because I didn't think I could get the property. It was such a big, beautiful property that I didn't think I could get it for what I needed to get it at. Even though I've done over 140 deals, I still have, sometimes lack confidence, because you just go into a deal and think that you can't buy that property for such a low price. But I've learned over and over through practice and repetition that it can happen when you least expect it. So everybody goes into a negotiation sometimes with lower confidence than they realize. And as you listen, to the seller and emphasize with them and ask questions and build a rapport with them, you almost become a really good friend when you don't even really know them that well, because you're listening to a lot of their problems and listening about their family and what they've been through and the reason why they're selling the property. This is all things that you're going to use not against them, but to give them what they want for the property, because what they really want for the property is to get out of the property. Depending on what their situation in the bottom dollar, if they're selling, they want to get out of there. So you're listening, like I said, and they're telling you why they want to get out. They're telling you what they want at first for the property, and then the more you listen and negotiate with them, it happens every single time that they come down in price every single minute that you talk to them. So back to how I negotiated this last deal. They wanted $40,000. I looked over the whole property, listened to everything, every single word that the seller was saying. She was getting a divorce, and she told me everything about the property, all the work that they put into it, why her and her husband split up, and all the work that he did. And they basically tell you all their problems, and you really don't want to listen to them. You don't really want to be negative and know everything, but they really want to tell you about it. So you have to listen. And in doing so, you build a strong rapport with them. And it leads up to them telling me, what their bottom dollar is, what they paid for the property, what the taxes are. And they start to tell you that they can't afford the taxes anymore. They can't afford the payment. It's just too much to take care of. The property is too big. If they were together, if it was a couple, their spouse may have taken care of the property, and they may not be able to handle that task anymore, because they may have kids to take care of. One spouse might have went on their own, and the other spouse may have had to, now take care of their kids, bring them to school, so they don't have the money to keep the property up, or they don't have the time. So they may have to downsize. And you're listening to all that there's one of the things in the steps that I'm talking about. I keep saying it, but it's really important that you do this. take the time. Don't be in such a hurry to get off the phone or sit in front or sit next to the seller. Be patient. Patience is a big key. So what I did was listen to them, and as time went by, I asked them, I had they wanted 40,000, and then they went down to 30,000 because I said, is that the lowest you will go? So within 15 to 20 minutes talking, they went down $10,000 just by listening to them and building a rapport and asking a lot of questions about where they were going after they sold. Let them know that I had other properties, that if they wanted to downsize, you want to let your seller know that if you do buy the property, you're going to be able to maybe help them get into another property that's smaller with a smaller payment. And if you know what area they're going to go to, if you don't have that property, you're going to start looking for a property. So you want to let them know that if you don't have the property that they may move into, if you buy theirs, that you're going to start looking for them. You want to help them in every way possible that you can. And so if, knowing your bottom dollar going in, if, say I had a seller, or say I had a buyer for my property, that property right there that I'm going to buy for 40,000, and I wanted to make $10,000. Well, I know I had to buy the property for 30,000 or less, depending on what I'm going to go through for closing costs. So you want to know them numbers going in, your bottom dollar. And the next step is knowing your top dollar that you can pay. So you know your bottom dollar, you know your top dollar. So anyway, I went into the negotiation with her, and I came out buying the property for $20,000 because I went through a series of questions with the seller. And at the end, I asked them if they would do a seller finance deal, a rent to own. So you always want to ask them that. Once you know your top dollar that you can pay and the bottom dollar, you're going to negotiate through the negotiation process and get that price down as far as you can. So if my top dollar, I knew my buyer would pay $40,000 for that. So I knew my top and bottom dollar. And to my surprise, when I went down to $20,000, told them that, she said no. And what you do is the next step is you got to be willing to walk away from the deal. So, if she said no at $20,000, so what one negotiation tactic you can use is to bring a partner. What I do is my wife usually goes with me a lot of times to these negotiations. We look at the property together, and when it comes down where the rubber meets the road to negotiate the terms, my wife and I play good cop and bad cop, because what we learn to do is if we can get seller financing on a deal, we will. But if they won't take what we're offering, then I'll say, look, I really want this property, and I think I can, I think I could, in this case, maybe pay the 30,000 before I got her down to 20. And my wife would come in and say, well, look, we can't afford 30. We got to stick to 20. You work together as a team, you and your partner, to bring a negotiation to your, so you can control it. So you want to agree with a seller a lot of times too. I failed to mention that. You want to agree, with what they're saying. Every time they talk to you, you want to shake your head and agree a lot of the things that they're saying, because that gives them gives them more, what I want to say, they'll agree with you more. So if you keep the negotiation process going and agreeing and find things to agree on when you're talking to them. You don't want to talk about you. Like I said, you always want to talk about them. Keep the negotiation process about them and doing what you can for them, making it a win-win situation. And like I said, you want to learn what their needs are, what they want for the property, what they need to get in the negotiation process, what they want to keep with the property, what they want to let go with the property. There might be some things that you really want in the negotiation process, but you got to find out what they're willing to let go. And just on this property that I talked about, once we settled on a price, there was a lot of things in there that they didn't want to let go that I wanted. There was extra cabinets that went with it. There was a clawfoot bathtub, and you have to stick to your guns and be willing to walk away from the deal, even if you settled on a price, because you can get a lot more things by negotiating those personal properties that are in there. Like I said, one was a clawfoot bathtub. There was new vanity that went in, that you could use. There was a bunch of stuff in there that they were still updating that she wanted to keep. So I told her at the bottom price that if everything went, I would buy the property in a very short time manner. And she really didn't want to do that. But when I was willing to walk away from the deal, then I got the deal for $20,000. So the property was worth well over that. And it's an old property with hardwood floors, a lot of new updated stuff that they already did to it. So keep in mind that you also want to know how they plan on transitioning and where they're going, like we talked about earlier, how they plan to make the transition, where they're going, why they're selling. And when you know why they're selling, that's where you get a lot of the information from them. And you can give them what they want. Because just for example, if they had to move somewhere, maybe you have a truck that could move them, maybe you could help them out in the situation that they needed. Once you start to learn all their needs and why they're selling, you might be able to use that in the negotiation process. These are all little tricks that you have to pay attention to and use while you're negotiating. Write things down, or use your iPhone and tape the conversations maybe, or your partner can write them down, but you want to listen to every single part of the negotiation that they are telling you, because you're going to use this in every way to make it a win-win situation. Everything they tell you, you're going to find a way to make it where you can help them out. You have to have all the information. Because you did listen, you're going to have to use all that information. So you want to capture it all. And you're going to control the negotiation after you've listened to all this stuff and all these points that they're telling you, by giving all you can, but staying at your price point. And what I mean by that is if they don't want to give you what you're asking for, like some personal property in there, then maybe you can make some other kind of deal. Maybe you can say, well, I can't give you what you're asking. I'm going to give you this. You can keep this, but maybe you can make some other kind of deal with them. Negotiation is learning. Think of all kinds of ways out of the box, and that's what I do every time that. I know we're talking about buying a property, but when I have a buyer that is looking to buy a property from me, just to talk about getting out of the box, thinking out of the box, I ask them if they don't have the down payment for a property, I ask them what they have to trade. So just by listening to all their needs, why they're selling, how they plan to transition, where they're going, and what they have to move and stuff like that, I get to know what they have for other things to use in the negotiation process. So like I said, you're gonna give them all you can, but you have to stay at your price point, and you're gonna know that by what your buyer is paying you. So let me scroll down here a little bit. We talked about good cop, bad cop, using your team, your partner to help them. You're gonna let them know that you have cash. That's a big thing. And I know, like I said, if you don't have cash, let them know that your partners have cash. And you always want to ask them for seller financing. But as we go down over the steps again, like I said, beginner negotiation is two parties coming to an agreement. So you have to come to an agreement. And first step is don't be vulnerable. Build your confidence. you have to learn this by just doing it. You know, you're not going to be great at it. You have to be patient and just make some mistakes and fail at it and start negotiating, practice it. It has to be repetition. Do it over and over and over again. Practice it with your team member. Just get on the phone and start negotiating with, you know, just listening to a seller and practice, you know, buying a property. Even if you don't buy it, just practice listening to them. This last deal that I did, you know, I couldn't believe that I got the property for what I did. She's asking $40,000, and it was worth, fixed up. This property is worth $125,000, and it doesn't need a lot of work. They put a new furnace in it. They put new plumbing, new electrical in it, a new bathroom upstairs. There's some really, really old woodwork in there that is really good selling points of it. So just by listening to the problems that she was having, why she was selling, where she was going. She even asked me about buying a property from me after we bought the property from her. So all this is from asking. You know, you have to deal with really motivated sellers, though. That's the whole key, is really motivated. And those 4 Ds that we talked about, once you find a motivated seller, it's all a matter of listening and negotiating. So if you don't think you're a really good negotiator, get on Google, put in Google how to negotiate, use these 5 steps that I'm talking about. You know, you really have to use them and listen to people. Yeah, that's the most important thing. If you don't want to sit down and listen to people's problems, listen to why they're selling, then, you know, you're not going to make it in negotiation. And you really can't put this on your partner to do. You can if they're a really good negotiator, but you have to learn it. If your partner's a good negotiator, then let them do it and learn from them. But you have to get good at negotiating. And you can only do that by knowing your bottom dollar, knowing your top dollar, doing it over and over again, and listening to your seller. So I don't know if you guys got any questions. If you guys want to tell me, any beginner negotiators out there, if you tell me what some of the problems that you've had or what you're afraid of, or any questions at all, you know, I'd be glad to answer these questions. Is that the lowest you can go? Debbie said that's a real good question. You have to ask that in the negotiation process, because they always say, well, you know, it's negotiable. Or they might say, right off the bat, I told you, if you don't ask, right off the bat, by talking to them, they come down $10,000. Think about that, $10,000 within 10 minutes of talking to them. Excuse me. So this stuff really works. If you get good at bringing the price down, it's unbelievable how much that you can get them down. And Debbie wants to know more about seller financing, rent to own. Well, you know, through the negotiation process, you always want to ask at the end if their bottom dollar. Once you get them down to their bottom dollar, and let them know that you could get cash, and you're going to offer this price, you're going to go to the bank and you can get this cash price. You tell them, you say, what if I can't, you know, what if I can't get that money, that cash money? Will you do an owner finance deal? Will you do a rent to own deal? And that's how you can negotiate further to get the best deal. Let me give you another example of a camp I just bought on the lake. I went and talked to the seller, listened to them for 2 hours. My wife and I, we played good cop, bad cop. We asked them, you know, what's the lowest they could take. They gave us a price. We talked even more. We looked around the property. We found numerous things wrong with the property. And I know we teach that you don't want to tell the person what's wrong with the property, but a good negotiator will look around and not tell them that their property's bad, but just talk about things. Say, hey, look, you know, does your property need any work? Ask them if it needs any work, because that's what you can really use in the negotiation process, because they'll tell you some things that are wrong. And then that atmosphere puts in their mind, they feel like, you know what, maybe this property isn't worth what I'm asking. When you talk about the problems that might be really evident when you both talk about it. And seller financing, if you ask them if they will do that, So that's the very last thing you ask about, because you revert to that when you get them down to the bottom dollar. And just for instance, I got them down, the property owner wanted $145,000 for the property. It was assessed for 165. I looked around, my wife and I both looked at things and asked him what the property, if there's any problems. And he immediately told me a bunch of things that he knew that was wrong with it, why he wanted to get out of it. He couldn't fix the property. So we used them in our negotiation tactic to say, well, it's going to cost us this much to fix them right off the bat. Well, I started getting down the price down. We got him down to $100,000 from $125,000 right off the bat. And then we started playing good cop, bad cop. And I said that, we could probably do $100,000 if he would owner finance. I told him that, I could get $80,000 and that's all I could get for the property. So you let him know that what your bottom price is. Once you know that bottom price, you let him know that that's what it is, and let him know that it's lower than what you can really get. If you can get 100, tell him it's 80. And that's what I did. I said, look, I can only get 80 for the property. And he goes, oh, I can't take 80. There's absolutely not. We can't take 80. And he goes, $100,000 is the best I can do. So I said to him, well, would you do $80,000 and then finance the other $20,000 with us? And maybe we can come to some kind of terms that we could pay the other 20 to you in an owner finance deal, and maybe give you some interest and, make a separate payment, maybe, a while down the road, a year or two, whatever we agree. And once I asked that seller financing question, he said, yeah, I think we could probably do that. So that's where my wife came in, and we started playing good cop, bad cop again. And she goes, well, I don't really think we can do 2 payments. Right now, it's coming winter time. We got, we got this payment, we got that payment. We got other properties that we got to fix up. We're just, strapped. And we left it at that. When we left, she basically told him that we couldn't do 2 payments. So it was back down to $80,000 when we left. So we knew from talking to him that he was very, very motivated. And this technique, working as a team, worked really well, because when we got home, a few hours later, he called back and said that he talked with his wife, and they understand that, there's no way we could swing it with 2 payments. And, my wife coming in and teaming up with me, and that really made that difference. So we got the property locked up at $80,000, and I negotiated every single thing in the property. There was a pellet stove. He told me, he goes, well, I'll go the $80,000, but you're not going to have the pellet stove in there. You're not going to have the Toya stove fuel, 2 fuel tanks. You're not going to have the fuel furnace in there, and you're not going to have a bunch of other things and all kinds of tools in the garage with it. So I ended up saying, well, I'm approved. I showed him the approval letter for $80,000. I was actually approved for more than that, but I got the letter from the bank only stating I was approved for $80,000. That's another technique that you can use in a negotiation process. If you think you're approved for $100,000, or if you are, only get an approval letter from the bank for 80 and use that as a negotiation tactic. Show them that. Say, look, I can only get 80. And then they think you only can get 80 when you can really get 100, but use that. So I told them that we're going to buy a camp that weekend. We had 3 other offers out there, in which we did. And two other offers that we made would not take any of our offers. So we knew them were pretty much dead in the water, but we did tell them that we had 3 offers out there, and we were going to buy a property this weekend, a camp. And so he knew that we meant business. So we really, we got that property for $80,000, got every single thing with the property, and those negotiation tactics work. So I want you guys to don't be vulnerable, gain confidence in everything that I talked about. Use these techniques, use it with repetition, listen to them over and over again, know your bottom dollar, know your top dollar. Be willing to walk away from a deal. Absolutely be willing to walk away from a deal, because don't get stuck buying something that you don't want. Walk away from numerous deals. Get used to doing that while you're practicing. Listen to people. I always call it the LLC of the business, and that's not limited liability company. That's listen, learn, and control the negotiation. Good cop, bad cop, play that. Information is key. Learn everything you can by listening. Use that information in your negotiation. Help them every way you can, and let them know you have cash. So them are my negotiation tactics. That's what I use every day, over and over again. And I'd like to answer a few questions for you guys. Look at the questions here. Scroll through the questions a little bit, and hopefully we can answer a couple. Scroll up here. This isn't a very long hangout, but I wanted to make it quick for you guys, not real long. I want you guys to learn a few things and practice them. Hope you guys had a good time tonight listening to me. And if you got any questions, any more questions after this, I'll check out the chat box. Did inspection today while real through. One-liners work great. Yep, Kelly. It's amazing how a seller will drop $5,000 with one question. Yeah, $5,000, $10,000. I've had them drop $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. Yes, that's exactly right. That's a pretty good income for a conversation, and it's all about sticking with the conversation and hanging with them and listening. I don't know how many times that I really wanted to get out of there and not listen anymore, but it turned into tens of thousands of dollars off the price. So I know you guys want us to learn some more about rent to own or seller financing, but this isn't really seller financing Google Hangout. We'll do another, I promise you, the next Google Hangout I do will be on seller financing rent to own, and we'll go with that. Kelly also says great negotiation tools will have a website. Let the website do negotiating for you. Yes, your website can tell a lot of things. I mean, before they even talk to you. Once they go to your website, it looks professional. You can answer a lot of questions. Put frequently asked questions on there. Yeah, great. So hope you guys had a good time. This isn't, like I said, a long one. But if you got any more questions, shoot them to me in private message, or email me, or get a hold of me on Insider Elite. So I'm going to cut this short, and hope all you guys had a good time. I really enjoy spreading my message with you guys and getting better myself. I'm not the best negotiator there is, but through practice and repetition, just what I talked about, I get better and better all the time. So if you guys get any more questions, if you guys get anything to teach me, put it on there. What's worked for you, what hasn't worked for you, let me know so I can use it in my own negotiations. So Jay Lee got a contract yesterday at 60, got it down for 45. That's awesome. Any negotiation books? No, what I recommend is getting on Google and Googling how to negotiate, and just going over and reading everything you can. I got tapes on negotiation. I got some real old tapes that I used to listen to all the time with, geez, Tom, who's it? Negotiation. I can't think of the guy's name. There's tons of them that I've watched and listened to. And darn, I can't. Tony Robbins, I got every product that he has for negotiation. And some of the old timers that I watch on, get on Google, get on YouTube, and just type it in, and there's tons and tons of information on how to negotiate, what to use, what to say. And I've used all these things that I've seen on Google, seen on YouTube, and you'll learn new tactics as you go. So I'm gonna say goodnight, guys, and hope you guys can negotiate tens of thousands of dollars down by using some tactics. Listen is the #1 tactic. So I'll see you guys later. Have a good night.